College football is back. If you are watching this has probably been released the week after week 0 has happened, which to be fair, there's like 4 games that are going on. The most interesting one is Florida State, Georgia Tech in Dublin, Ireland at 11 a.m. on a Saturday. I'm excited for it. Don't get me wrong. You'll probably see a reaction video or something around that because I think Florida State is fascinating. I think it's interesting that that line continuously got closer and closer towards Georgia Tech's direction. Nothing close to where they're favored, but like going from a 14-point lead for Florida State to then like 11.5 is enough of a move to kind of highlight, look at why are you doing that. But I don't think Florida State loses that game. I would sprinkle maybe. No, I won't even go there. Let's talk about the point of today's video before I get too sidetracked. This is a viewing guide. I remember time and time again when I was a college student that it wasn't easy, to be honest. When you have a lot on your plate, you have a lot of work on the weekends, that watching football all day, every day wasn't the easiest thing in the world. And I've honestly noticed that even now outside of college. And to be fair, you can easily click your ESPN app and point at which games you want to go watch. I thought I could make a comprehensive guide every single week talking about what games you need to prioritize and why. You could also just treat this like a week 1 preview. But if this is your first time seeing this face, seeing the hat, seeing the microphone up here, thank you. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk football. This is Rush the Field. This is my passion project. And I have a goal of 1,000 subscribers by December. We're only about 300 away. That's insane to me. I've been doing videos since my sophomore year of college. This has been about like year 4. And I really do believe that one day this can turn into something. And all I'll ever ask of you is just give me another chance to talk football with you, whether that's a like, a comment, a subscribe, anything to support or give me some critiques on what I could do better means the world to me. Genuinely, I am willing to put in the work to someday make this happen. But with that being said, let's talk about week 1 because, week 0 is coming past. Whatever happened, whoa, that was a crazy game, right? Georgia Tech actually pulled it off. Whoa, Florida State, DJU might be a guy. Like I could make up some BS reactions, but I don't know what happened because this is happening before that game has even happened. But let's circle Thursday, August 29th. We're talking week 1, North Dakota State versus Colorado. This is a fascinating game to me. If you did not know, North Dakota State is one of those D2 programs that should not be treated like a D2 program. This is not FCS Midwest. This is not FCS Northeast, Southeast, whatever you want to call it. This is not a team that you just want to, check off a win. It's going to be a nice tune-up game before we play anyone real. This is a real team, especially with the contrast and play styles of what Colorado struggled with last year and what is a strength for North Dakota State. Going head-to-head. It'll be very interesting to see what Deion has prepared over this offseason. The week 1 game is the one where you can prepare the most because you have the longest amount of time to get ready for week 1. I'll be very curious on how polished they look, how their time management looks. Colorado should beat this team. Colorado should probably beat them by multiple touchdowns. But what if they don't? What's the narrative going to be? What's the hype train going to look like? We saw how well they looked in week 1 last year. I'm fascinated to see it. That is 7 p.m. on a Thursday. There's a couple games on Thursday. Prioritize that one. That game is going to be already super interesting because of Deion Sanders. I think it's even more interesting when you talk about the clash of play styles. We're talking Friday, August 30th. What games should you prioritize? Well, I'll be honest here. On August 30th, take a day off. I will say, if you're a sicko like me, I will give you 2 games to watch. Temple at Oklahoma. I say this not because I think it's going to be a good game. Maybe you watch this like a preseason game. Watch a couple drives, specifically with Oklahoma's offense. Make sure they look smooth. Make sure there's fluidity with that offense. I've seen time and time again, especially with like Texas A&M is a good example, where there's just times when they play a lower level opponent. I think of Sam Houston a couple years ago with Haynes King. The offense just looked stagnant. It didn't look smooth, which you're not looking for perfection, but you're looking for a playbook that is condensed. You're not, sending the kitchen sink at Temple, but you want to be able to do the small things easy. Can Jackson Arnold, show off his accuracy, flex his muscles a little bit? Can the offensive line, dominate a lower level team? Because I'm not expecting them to struggle against Temple, but if they do, that's kind of a red flag. Does that Deion Burks and Jackson Arnold connection look real? I'm fascinated by that game just because I want to see what the fluidity of that offense looks like because I don't have many questions on the defense. Now let's talk about 9:30. By the way, that previous game was 6 p.m. 9:30. If you need a late night game, if you don't got anything to do on a Friday, hey, that's completely fine. Be a football sicko like me and watch TCU at Stanford. TCU was the national champion at 10D in 2022. Then you have Stanford with Alec Aomaner. I apologize if I butchered that. That's the guy that dominated Travis Hunter when they beat Colorado last year. I think these two play styles are very interesting. I want to see what TCU looks like. This is a team that heavily relies on the portal. They were in the national championship one year. The following year was a disappointing season. What does the third year look like with Sonny Dykes, or potentially the fourth year? I apologize. I think, was it his first year? No, I won't even get into that. I'll get too sidetracked. And then you get Stanford with a wide receiver prospect with Alec that looks really intriguing. He's a bigger body receiver. How does TCU handle that? I still understand that they run a 3-3-5 defense, which, if you don't know, that's 3 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, 5 secondary players. If Stanford's running the ball a lot, I'd be curious, does TCU have the players to handle that? But like I said, that's a very light schedule on a Friday. If you want to prioritize your time and use that, go ahead. These are the games I would focus on. But the entree, we talked about the appetizers. The entree is week 1 on August 31st, Saturday, the first Saturday of college football. Clemson, Georgia, number 14, playing number 1. This is not in a home-to-home situation. This is a neutral site in Atlanta, Georgia. The reason why I put neutral site in quotations is because we're talking about Georgia playing in Atlanta, Georgia. Any problems with that? Notice any issues? Yeah, this is going to be something that Georgia is probably going to play in this stadium by the end of the season. And I'm talking about the SEC title game in Atlanta. I am interested in this game. It's a big matchup. You see the rankings. It's at 11 a.m. Problem I personally have is I don't think this game's going to be relatively close. I think Georgia's going to dominate. All love to Dabo Swinney, Cade Klubnik. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong and actually put up a fight against Georgia, but I have no expectation that Georgia loses this game. That's why I put an insurance plan. That's why I put a backup game, that being West Virginia and Penn State. This is in West Virginia. I think this game's fascinating. I think if we're looking at a top 10 team that potentially could be on upset alert, that might come out of nowhere, we're looking at Penn State. And I'll be honest, if you have not watched my Big 12 prediction video, you can go down in the comments. I found a ton of West Virginia fans that got in my ear and told me about their quarterback and how interesting this offense may be. And I think, yes, Penn State's going to have a very good defense. Yes, Penn State should have an improved offense, at least when we're talking about schematically with the Kansas offensive coordinator going to Penn State. They have a talented quarterback in Drew Aller. They have Nick Singleton. Like, there's a lot of things to like, but going to West Virginia is not nothing. Not to mention, when you're implementing a new scheme week 1 in an away environment, you're due for some growing pains, and maybe they can't afford those. Maybe West Virginia comes out firing, catches Penn State's defense on their heels, and now we're in a ball game, and now this gets really entertaining. I think that this is a sneaky upset alert. I wouldn't put money on it. I wouldn't go out here and say, yeah, Penn State's losing, because I'm not that confident, but I do think this game could be a lot more interesting than what Georgia and Clemson may be able to provide, just because Kirby Smart, he's one of those guys like Nick Saban, where week 1, he prepares like this has been his whole life and kind of embarrasses the week 1 opponent. I think of like Georgia and Oregon, what happened then. I don't think Clemson's going to get blown out, but I just don't know if this game's going to be that entertaining. And when we're prioritizing your time, especially if you're like maybe a casual college football fan, or maybe you're just looking for the better game, I think Penn State and West Virginia could be really, really interesting. And at 2:30, be sat. Find a spot. I don't care if it's a bar. I don't care if it's your living room. Find a spot and go watch Miami at Florida. Incredible game. Incredible week 1 game. This is going to be, one of those games where you look around, put some bets down of 10.5 cramps by the first quarter. You're telling me they got to go play in the swamp at 2:30. Insane. I think this is going to be an incredible game, because when we look at Florida, the entire offseason has been talked about as how are they going to handle that 2024 schedule? How are they going to handle one of the most difficult schedules we have ever seen? Well, they're going to have to get some easy wins early in the year, and it's going to have to be against, maybe Texas A&M in week 3. Maybe it's Miami right here. And how does Miami look with Cam Ward, Damian Martinez, Sam Brown, Xavier Restrepo? Is that offense flowing and moving in the swamp? It's hard for me to predict that, but I think this is going to be such a good game. You're going to see a lot of speed on the field. I'm curious on how Graham Mertz is going to play. And I'm also curious if DJ Lagway, 5-star quarterback out of Texas, is going to play in his limited time. Especially, I think he's going to get into some specialty plays. We've seen Utah come in, really struggle in the swamp. You got to highlight it. I think this is going to be potentially the best game of the week, but this is one of those games. I think it's second place. The first place, I am biased. I'll talk about that later in this video, but if you just need a great game in the middle of the day, or you want to prioritize your time, whichever way you want to, this is the game you want to be sat for. But for whatever reason, if you need a backup one, I got a weird game for you. If this game kind of sucks for whatever reason it may be, I don't want to call anything a guarantee. I have a weird game for you to backup watch. That being 3 p.m. Boise State at Georgia Southern. Don't get grossed out with me. Don't get weird. Boise State has a lot of interesting players. They obviously benched Malachi Nelson, which is kind of surprising to me. I had Boise State as my pick to be the group of 5 team that makes the college football playoff. But Ashton GT, I apologize if I messed up the name, electric running back. And I understand Georgia Southern lost I believe it was their head coach that is now at Alabama as the defensive coordinator. And they're expected to take a step back. They were 9-3 last year. They're projected at over around 6 wins, but it is in Georgia Southern. And I'm curious on how Boise State looks. And I think if Boise State can come out in dominating fashion, it'll be at least a little bit of entertainment until we get to the night games. There's a big gap between this game and then the night games, just because there's a lot of, non-conference cupcake games in between. You can kind of flip your channel, but out of all of those, I think this one has a lot of NFL potential talent, and maybe we get to see why they went with Maddox instead of Malachi Nelson. I'm fascinated to watch what Boise State will be in 2024, but I got to give you at least something in case for whatever reason Miami and Florida doesn't work out. But the best game of the week, in my opinion, 6:30 on the dot, Texas A&M and Notre Dame in Kyle Field, or if you don't know what the stadiums are, at Texas A&M. Game day, going there. Everything, the storylines. You get former Duke head coach Mike Elko goes back to Texas A&M. He was the former defensive coordinator when Jimbo was there. You have Riley Leonard, former Duke quarterback, goes to Notre Dame, as well as a defensive end going to Notre Dame. This is a clash of two very familiar opponents or former buddies. I didn't want to say teammates, but they worked closely together, so they know each other. And I'm very curious on how two things will work out. Notre Dame, they need to look good and they need quality wins. The thing is with Notre Dame this upcoming year in the 12-team playoff, they don't get an opportunity to get an automatic bid because they're not in a conference. Therefore, they're still living off the resume where they need quality wins. They need to prove themselves to a committee to get that 5 through 12 spot to guarantee their spot into the college football playoff. And if they're able to beat Texas A&M week 1, it's pretty smooth coasting until they play, I believe, like maybe USC. Or I forget who they play in the middle of the year, but like they have about a 4 to 5 week stretch where it gets pretty easy. Apologies. I think they play USC to finish the year, but there is a tough opponent ahead. I just can't think of it off the top of my head. Then we get to Texas A&M. What a start it would be for the Mike Elko era if they're able to win at home and beat a top 10 team. Not to mention, they're going into the rest of the season on high hopes. One of the biggest things with Texas A&M is they have 4 marquee matchups. They have Notre Dame, Missouri, LSU, and Texas all at home. Those are their 4 most difficult matchups, and they're all at home. Not to mention they have some difficult road games at Auburn, at Florida, but beating Notre Dame sets them off on a trajectory of, okay, this could potentially be a playoff team. I don't say that lightly because then they just have to look at the rest of those top 3 games, not to mention clean up on the away games. They're on a trajectory of 10-2, but if they lose this game, they beat up a cupcake in week 2, and then they have to go at Florida on some shaky grounds. I'm so fascinated to see by this game just because Notre Dame is starting about I think it was 6 total starts on the offensive line against a ferocious Texas A&M defensive line. And then Texas A&M has struggled over the past 3 seasons on the offensive line going against one of the most veteran-based groups on the defensive line that I've ever seen in Notre Dame with a ton of NFL talent. I don't know what else I got to say to hype you up on this game. It's going to be a night game in Kyle Field. The environment's going to be rocking. This game's going to be fantastic. This is my number 1 game for the week for good reason. College Game Day picked a fantastic spot. I cannot wait for this. But with that being said, we also have Sunday. I almost forgot. Sunday at 6:30, you got USC versus LSU. If you want points on the board, you are going to get it in this game. This is in Las Vegas, mind you. And we're looking at two teams that historically over the past couple of seasons have struggled on the defensive side of the ball. Garrett Nussmeier, new starting quarterback for LSU, with Kyron Lacey, who I'm very high on. And then you get Miller Moss and Zachariah Branch on the other side of the ball. Which defense is going to step up and make the most stops in order for them to win this football game? This is a marquee game for a guy like Lincoln Riley. This is a marquee game for Brian Kelly and the trajectory of this LSU team. I think to finish off week one, this is a great game to finish your week on. I would prioritize this game if you're able to, especially on a Sunday night. Make a nice dinner, chill out, relax, enjoy the rest of your weekend and watch this game. But with that being said, let me know your thoughts on this type of a video. I have fun doing it. It's real easy for me. I can do this on a weekly basis. I know it'll be a little less chaotic, but to be fair, my thought process is always chaotic. So thank you so much for watching this video. Welcome to Rush the Field. Give me another chance to talk football with you and have a fantastic rest of your day.